Thanks so much for joining us this evening for our virtual cooking class with Chef Lynn Wells. She's got a delicious, fresh ginger and carrot soup prepared for us tonight. I'm so excited to go through the steps with her. If you have questions as we go along, please feel free to drop those in the chat box. I'll be keeping an eye on those, and we'll make sure to get those answered as we go. All right, Lynn, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, well, thanks so much, Kate, and welcome everyone. I'm especially excited for the Sagewell Fitness Center members to be joining us tonight. Hopefully we've got some of you with us. I'm a new member myself, so if you're from Sagewell, welcome. As Kate said, I am Lynn Wells, personal chef here in Greensboro. I'm a native of North Carolina and grew up here, and actually used to work for the Cone Health System for about 21 years. So I feel like things cycle back for a reason. So what a perfect day, rainy and cold, to be talking about carrot and ginger soup. This is actually one of my favorites. It's very easy to freeze. And I'm just going to give a little plug to the farmer that I got the carrots from. But it's an easy recipe. It's very healthy. Kate will fill in as we need to nutritionally. I'm a former registered dietitian, so I keep it up a little bit with the new trends and whatnot, but still know the basics. And then who doesn't love ginger? You can add more ginger than the recipe calls for, or you can back it off a little bit, but it's got ginger and garlic and the vegetable broth and carrots. And then when it's all cooked and blended together, you can do an optional garnish of Greek yogurt and a little bit of maple syrup or honey just to drizzle. It makes things look pretty, and it also, the flavors blend beautifully with this soup. I'm also going to do a herbal tea without tea leaves. I thought I'd do a couple of nice, warm, soothing recipes for you tonight. And you could do the tea before you go to bed, or you could also make a cup while the carrots are cooking if you are making this soup. So I'll be doing that as well tonight. So let's get started. I mentioned the carrots. These beautiful carrots came from Sunset Market Gardens. That is in Reidsville, but on the Greensboro side. They are on the end of Church Street, or like your Church Street, but it's Sunset Market Gardens. I encourage you to go out there. They're open on Wednesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. and on Saturdays from 9 until noon. And they do have a website, and you can go online and see what they're actually going to be providing in the beautiful store that they have. So I went and got these carrots the other day with the top still on them. And they're just beautiful. And if you've never had a fresh carrot out of the ground, sort of like going through the fast food drive-through and getting a burger that's full of fillers. It might satisfy you for a little bit, but it just stays with you compared to a nice fresh ground burger that you might cook at home on the grill. So the comparison is like just no comparison compared to store-bought carrots versus something that just came out of the ground. I have actually fallen in love with carrots. I could eat them every day if they were coming from, a local farm. It just makes a big difference. The other thing I wanted to mention, food waste is so important, and it's really on the map now, probably more than ever. Our moms and grandmothers and ancestors probably didn't throw anything away, and we've gotten away from that. So the greens to the top of the carrots, not only I think are they pretty, I use these as garnish. Like I'll just pinch these little leaves off and put them in tossed salad or in a pasta salad. I might finish a dish and lay the leaves on the plate, just to give it a nice appealing visual effect. And then the other thing you can do is if you get enough carrot top greens, you could use these as pesto. With pesto, you use typically recipe is fresh basil leaves with some fresh garlic and pine nuts and olive oil, and you blend that in a food processor. You could substitute basil for the carrot tops, and it's a very delicate, light, mildly sweet flavor. Same thing with arugula. Arugula also makes a nice pesto. So that is the carrots. The other thing about these carrots is think of corn, an ear of corn where you might see the corn silk. Same with these carrots. There's just fine little hairs on them. And if I'm cooking these for myself, then I know that is where this came from. But if I'm cooking this for a client, I will wash these and peel them and remove that. Otherwise, they're going to go, oh, there's a hair in my soup, and we don't want that. So if these are organic, the farm out in Reidsville, Sunset Market Gardens, is an organic farm. So when I know and trust the farmer, I don't wash or peel. Well, I do wash, but I don't peel the carrots before I cook them, and that is personal preference. If you do have a preference for peeled carrots, I would suggest when you peel the carrots, save the peeling after they've been washed, of course. And that's the kind of thing that you could put in a stock pot with some celery ends and some onion skins and things like that, and cook those to make part of the vegetable stock. So we've got this nice, beautifully peeled carrot. I'm just going to pinch the little end off, but you'll want to follow the recipe that was sent to you. Hopefully everybody has that. And I've got about a pound of carrots in the pot that has already been cooking. And then I added 4 cups of the vegetable broth and a small sweet onion. I usually like to use the sweet onions or Vidalia onions. They've got obviously a sweet flavor versus a red onion or a yellow onion. Anytime I'm cooking a demo, whether it's in the classroom or via Zoom, I like using the sweet onions because they don't make me cry when I'm doing the cooking demo. So that's another reason. The other thing that this recipe has in it that I mentioned earlier is ginger. So ginger you'll find in the produce section. It's usually in baskets open beside the shallots, which look like little small red onions. And you'll want to look for ginger that is not shriveled, does not look dry. It's got these little nubby fingers on them. And and it's perfectly fine because I think you sort of need to do this. I'm notorious at the store for just breaking off a little finger or little nub and smelling that ginger. Of course, I buy it, the little piece and the big piece, but I want to look at it and make sure that it's got that real nice fresh ginger aroma. This has also got great nutritional value to it. It's great if you have a little upset stomach. I believe it's on the list for non-inflammatory causing foods. And I just love the scent. We're also going to include this in our tea that I'll be making a little bit later. So with the ginger, what you want to do is you do want to peel this. I'm just going to break off this. I'm going to try to make it as even as I can, just so my grater doesn't get caught on the little nubs. But you can grate this a couple of ways. You can take a teaspoon and hold the ginger with your fingers and peel it like that. Or I usually use an actual peeler and just hold the ginger in my hand. I'm using at a sideways angle tonight so that hopefully you can better see, but I do discard this. Some things you can keep for stocks and some things just aren't worth the trouble. So there is just going to do one side of the ginger. That's what it looks like after you've peeled it. Peel the brown skin off. And if you don't have a microplane, that's what this kitchen tool is. This is probably the narrowest version. They've also make some that are about 2 to 3 inches wide, and this is a great tool to have. I use this for grating ginger. I use it for fresh garlic, and I also use it for fresh nutmeg. There's nothing like fresh nutmeg in desserts or soups or whatever you might be making. So this is a great way to grate the fresh ginger into the soup. And what will happen, some of it will fall into the bowl or the pot that you're cooking, but then it'll also collect right there in the groove of the microplane, and then you just can take a spoon or your finger and measure out what the recipe calls for. So I'm just gonna tap this into the pot. Like I said, the carrots and garlic and onion have already cooked. Just gonna tap that in there. And with garlic, I do like using fresh. Make sure, and this is not to insult anyone's intelligence, but make sure you know the difference between a garlic clove and a bulb of garlic. A bulb of garlic would give you maybe 10 to 12 little cloves, and make sure that you know the difference there. I do like using fresh, again, a lot of good nutritional values. But when you're using fresh garlic, you want to make sure that you're putting it either in a liquid, already chopped or sliced, or if you're sauteing garlic, you don't want it to burn. So let's say the recipe calls for garlic and onions. You want to make sure you saute your onions first, get those nice and translucent, and then add your garlic, maybe reduce the heat and keep stirring it just for about a minute so that the oils and the flavors release into the onions and the garlic doesn't burn. So we've got our garlic in, we've got everything in the pot. Now I'm going to show you talk to you about another option. We're going to blenderize this soup. Now it is, you see blenderized soups on fancy restaurant menus. This is a blended carrot and ginger soup. But if you don't like the looks of a pureed or a blended, creamy, nice soup, and you want something a little bit more chunky, just follow the same recipe. But I earlier charred these carrots in a very hot cast iron skillet. And you can see that they sort of take on a resemblance of being on the grill. They caramelize these natural sugars. Once they hit that really high heat, the natural sugars start coming through, and that's what causes these to brown. So you could make a nice chunky carrot and ginger soup if the consistency, if you want a chunkier consistency with the carrots sliced and the onions, say, chopped. But just wanted to tell you about that as an option. So let's put the carrots and the stock in the blender. And I do have a Vitamix. You don't by any means have to get a Vitamix. They're not cheap, but I will say that I have had this one for about 6 years, and they work beautifully. They will literally, just take just about anything to a really nice, smooth consistency. So what I'm putting in here are the cooked carrots with the onions and the ginger and the garlic. And I'm going to pour in a little bit of liquid. Now you don't want to add anything to the blender with it being very hot. If you do that, you'll have an explosion. If the lid, gets on too tight, you want to make sure that the soup or whatever you're getting ready to blend is cool or at room temperature at the least. And you may also end up doing this in batches, because if I were to put all of this in the blender, it might be a little bit too much for it to take. I'm going to put that in like so, and I'm going to just hold my pot up and pour some liquid in. And I'm just going to do a batch of it for tonight's purposes. And another ingredient that this soup has, a lot of times when you're cooking, you'll hear about acid, salt, fat, and heat. Actually, that was a TV show and is a cooking cookbook now. But the fat in this recipe comes from the olive oil that you saute the onions in. And then the acid comes from balsamic vinegar. Now you can either use balsamic vinegar, or I like using the balsamic glaze. It is a reduced version of balsamic vinegar. It's just had a lot of the moisture cooked down. It will not make a difference in the amount that you add, but it does add a level of rich sweetness, but also a perfect level of acidity from the vinegar. So I'm just gonna eyeball that. As cooks, we eyeball a lot of things. but it's also just almost a jet black color, and it's not going to really change the color of the soup, but it'll enhance the flavor quite a bit. And the salt, you can adjust the salt later after you've, blended this. But the other thing, once I blend it, we're going to make some noise with the blender. But once I blend it, that's when you'll want to, taste it, adjust the salt, or if it needs more pepper, you could use black pepper or white pepper. But just adjust that. You can always add salt, not take it away. The other thing, since this soup will have cooled down prior to me putting it in the blender, you'll want to blend it and then heat it back up, obviously, to get it to a nice hot soup temperature. All right, so let's blend this up. We'll start this on low and then turn it to high. This is just, moving all the chunks around. I want to also make sure that I've got enough liquid in here. Now I'm going to turn it to high. And there you have it. So hopefully this will be a right consistency. Now keep in mind, we've got a lot of liquid in that pot still. So if it's a little too thick, we can, adjust that. But this heated back up in the pot. Now this would be a huge portion, but for tonight's purposes, I wanted to fill the bowl and show you how colorful it was. And then another thing that really makes this, again, I mentioned garnishes. I think we eat with our eyes first. So if something looks good and healthy and nutritious, we'll be more apt to try it and enjoy it. So to this, I think a really nice garnish is either honey, agave syrup, or maple syrup. And I'm just going to drizzle that sort of around, maybe a half a teaspoon or a teaspoon, and then a dollop on top of Greek yogurt for a little bit of that twang. And then I'm going to pull right back in and garnish with the carrot top, just a little bit. And it's especially, nice because the soup is made from carrots, and then we've got the garnish made with carrots. And then if you've got any kind of delicate nut sitting around, like sliced almonds or slivered almonds or pine nuts, I've got some pine nuts here, then there you go. And this is packed full of nutrition. This would be good, lunch, dinner, for a snack, maybe a half a cup or a cup before you go to bed. It's high in fiber, another thing that's so important these days. But, in less than 30 minutes, you've got soup that you could freeze or keep in the refrigerator for up to 5 days in an airtight container. And it's really, really delicious. So trust me on this. You could also, if you wanted a little bit hotter, you could add crushed red pepper flakes to this garnish. You could increase the garlic, or you could increase the ginger. Just make it your own and, have fun with it. There's no rules when it comes to making soup. So now I just want to talk to you a little bit about the tea that I came across. And again, there's really not in stone recipe, but I thought it went well with this cold, rainy weather that we're having. It's supposed to get really cold next week again. And remember, some of our biggest snowstorms came in March. So I don't think we're over quite yet. But all this tea is, let me get some of this out of the way, if I can, is to take a cup, a mug, or cup of that you want to drink your tea in, and I've pre-boiled some water. And before I pour the water in, all this is, and again, this is no tea leaves, but if I wanted to get more cinnamon or more of the star anise, I would probably simmer this in the water in the pot or the teapot on the stove. So star anise, you may have seen Around Christmas time, it's got a very mild licorice flavor. And I'm not a licorice fan, but I do like this. So I'm just going to drop this in. Again, you could, with a cup, you can break it in pieces. So I'll put that in there, and a stick of cinnamon, a slice of lemon, a nice hearty slice of lemon, an orange slice, which is a little bit big, but you get the catch my drift, and then several leaves of fresh mint. And what you're going to do is pour the hot water over all of those wonderful ingredients. Fill the mug up to the top. And that is super hot. And then you could just take your small saucepan and cover that. I'm sure there are if you're tea drinkers, you're probably gasping at my technique. But there's all kinds of ways. My middle name is improvised. So if you don't have any fancy tea equipment, just take a saucer and let that steep covered for a couple of minutes and make sure your water's hot. And if you want it a little bit stronger, again, with the cinnamon, let it really seep into the water. You could just do this in a little small pot on the stove and let it simmer for about 20 minutes. But really, it's just fresh herbs, whatever you've got, some fresh lemon, fresh orange, some cinnamon, star anise. If you don't like the anise, you could put in a couple of whole cloves, and that would be really nice. But a lot of people, you've probably heard, drink hot lemon water in the morning to get their day started. Same sort of principle. But again, late at night, or maybe not even late at night, but before bedtime, sometimes I'll just want just a little something sweet. And if I just remember, tell myself, well, let's have a cup of hot tea. There's something about it that it's almost a meditation in a cup, I call it. I think the hot soup that's just super soothing and satisfying with a cup of hot herbal tea on a cold, rainy night. Then you can come back if you want and add a little bit of honey or not. And then you could keep all of that in the mug, or you could strain it. But just for probably 60 seconds, or while I've been talking, I'm picking up all of the essence of everything that's in that cup, the mint, and especially the mint and the orange. So I hope that you will give this a try, both the tea and the carrot soup. And if any of you have any questions, Kate and I are here to answer those and see what you got.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I really appreciate that. It looks so good. Yes, if anyone has questions, please feel free to type those in the chat box now so that we can get those asked as we wrap up here this evening. But I want to make a couple comments about this evening's dish. When we hear the term culinary medicine these days, I think you just demonstrated that perfectly, Lynn. Just this ability for our foods to really nourish us and keep us well. And all these ingredients that you use tonight, ginger and garlic, just really help strengthen our immune systems and help us keep from getting sick, helping fight inflammation, which we know is that underlying factor for all of our chronic diseases. So not only is it fresh and delicious and it looks beautiful, and you always make things seem so simple to make. So it's also easy, but it's so good for you. So I love that this soup really makes vegetables the star of the dish, and it turns out that beautiful orange color. And then with the garnishes, it just really looks, like such a presentation. And when you're just eating a bowl of soup for dinner, I mean, there's nothing simpler on a winter night, right? So thank you all so much for joining us. We have some special folks on the call tonight. I'm going to call out Lynn Banks. She's like the soup queen. She lives up in the mountains. So thank you for joining us. I'm seeing a lot of familiar names. And so I hope everyone gives these recipes a try. I love the homemade herbal tea, just keeping it super simple. Don't have to overcomplicate things. As always, we love having Chef Lynn Wells, and we'll have her back in a couple months to share some more delicious things with us as we get into warmer days. So our theme will start to change there. But I am not seeing any questions, Lynn. So I think that's it for tonight. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Good night.